Hello, and what is going on today, guys? Tomcat here, and welcome to a interesting idea that I had recently that I wanted to see actually what these would look like if we put them side by side. So the idea is to put mud physics in SpinTires MudRunner beside the mud physics in Off-Road Outlaws. And I know that they're very different games. They're both very different, types of games, and I understand that. I get that. But I still thought, since they're both games that I play pretty regularly, I figured I would kind of show them to you guys side by side in terms of mud and see what they actually looked like and see what the physics looked like while they're side by side. And yes, I understand that MudRunner is a PC game and, Off-Road Outlaws is a mobile game, and so I feel like, MudRunner definitely has more, I feel like there's more for them to take advantage of, obviously, on a PC platform. But, to be fair, like, when I say more to take advantage of, I mean, like, more hardware capability to take advantage of. But when you look at them side by side, here for the first time, I've got, on MudRunner, we're in, like, shallow mud, right? And in Off-Road Outlaws, we're in the little kind of mud pit in the desert, which the mud pit in the desert is basically a, it's what it is it's actually got varying levels of depth. So on one side, you've got the deeper mud, and then on the other side, you kind of have the shallower mud. Now, the only thing about this is the fact that, like, basically, when you look at them side by side, they actually don't look all that different, really. I mean, like, the only big difference that I see, I mean, like, besides obviously all of the crazy technical numbers and stuff, I'm not going to get into, like, the coding of the mud, of course, but the actual, like, just comparing them from a visual standpoint, what you really start to see is that, I mean, in MudRunner, you're going to have a bit of a smoother transition between the different levels of depth to the mud. And in Off-Road Outlaws, I mean, you have a little bit of a smooth transition, but it kind of just goes, like, visually, it goes from one to the other very dramatically. There isn't really a lot of, like, stepping from one type of mud to the other. Now, I will say, though, in MudRunner, generally when you will, with the mud physics, like, if you smash into the mud really, really fast, you will actually continue on for a little bit before it slows you all the way down. In Off-Road Outlaws, it doesn't really matter how fast you're going. If you hit the mud hard enough, you'll just basically almost stop. And I definitely think there's somewhere in there in between they could find a happy medium, but I do think that obviously I think that realism-wise, MudRunner is going to come out on top here. But I think what it also shows is the fact that Off-Road Outlaws, for being a mobile game, actually has a really good grasp of mud in general, and I think has one of the better physics systems for mud that I've seen out of a mobile application, because they look like, and see, that's the thing, they look different, obviously, but the way that the trucks, will leave tracks in the mud, and the way that the mud will actually kind of deform, is similar, and it's not perfectly similar, but it's similar in a lot of ways. Now, in MudRunner, obviously there's more depth to the actual terrain deformation. The terrain deformation in MudRunner is a physics system that has been being developed ever since the original SpinTires tech demo from years ago, but that engine has come a long way. Do I think that they could have done more with this engine, and do I hope that they do more with it in MudRunner 2? Absolutely. MudRunner 2 is a whole different ballgame on a whole different topic, but a big thing for me with the physics is, in MudRunner right now, as the physics are, they're already very, very good. But I think they could, well, when I say physics, I mean mud and terrain deformation physics. I think they're very, very good, but I do think they have, there's somewhere else they could go. They could advance this system further. Same goes for Off-Road Outlaws. I feel like if the Off-Road Outlaws mud and terrain deformation physics could be carried forward to the level that we have in MudRunner, you'd be looking at a really, really cool game. And I think that in the future of Off-Road Outlaws updates, it would be cool to see them do more with mud and do more with the terrain deformation that comes along with the mud. Now, in terms of deep mud, which I'm using Froggy's crazy mud truck that you guys saw recently to demonstrate, is basically the fact that with the deep mud, I find the deep mud in MudRunner to relate more to the snow in Off-Road Outlaws than to the mud in Off-Road Outlaws. And what I mean by that is the fact that I feel like basically driving in the snow in Off-Road Outlaws is more like driving in the deep mud in MudRunner. I feel like there's more similarities there than you would actually expect, if that makes any sense. Now, again, the reason why I say that is because the snow in Off-Road Outlaws really has a good bit of resistance to it, and it deforms a lot like the mud, for sure, but the way it deforms is actually, I think, a little bit closer to how mud, or deeper mud especially, in MudRunner actually deforms, and you'll see that in a minute if you watch the MudRunner screen right now, or the MudRunner gameplay on the screen right now, you'll see how when it gets to a certain point in this truck, the tires will sink down into the deeper mud, and you'll actually see it leave these really, really deep tracks in the mud, just like the truck in Off-Road Outlaws is leaving in the snow. And I really think that they could do more with the snow system, obviously. I mean, like, snow is a whole nother topic entirely, but and yeah, a lot of it is reskinned mud, like one way or another. But I do think that if you're trying to find a close comparison between the two, I feel like the deep mud in MudRunner is most closely comparable to the snow in Off-Road Outlaws. And I think that they actually really have more in common than a lot of people might think. And I think that if they kind of drew some features from each other, not just in the physics system, but entirely, I feel like if these games drew, little details and features from each other, they could really, really, like, both get a lot better. Because these are games that I've been playing for a long time now, and these are games that I've been playing on the channel for a long time now. And I think that there's a lot of potential in both games. And because there's a big following for both games. And honestly, I mean, the following for Off-Road Outlaws could even be considered maybe more dedicated than the following for MudRunner, because the following for MudRunner is very, very split in a lot of ways. The following for MudRunner, you deal with the people that love to mod the game, and then you deal with the people, on the other hand, that hate mods. And it's so weird. I don't understand the people that hate mods. I mean, if you don't like mods, don't use them. But I don't understand going around and coming after people that like to use mods. Personally, for me, I like to play MudRunner in both ways. I like to play it from a modding standpoint. I also like to play it from the standpoint of logging and actually using the game for its original intended, and not really even purpose, but playing the game the way it was originally meant to be played. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a lot to be, there's a lot that these games can learn from each other, and I think that they're a lot more similar than they might seem. I mean, especially now with Off-Road Outlaws incorporating trailers, these games are becoming closer and closer and closer together, and it's very interesting to me that one of the most interesting forms of competition for MudRunner, which is a PC and console game now, one of its fiercest forms of competition, in my opinion, is a mobile game, which is Off-Road Outlaws. And I think the way that they a lot of people don't really think that these games are similar. They're a lot more similar than they seem. They really, really are. And I think that that MudRunner could also learn a lot from the way the maps in Off-Road Outlaws are made. And I think that, like, especially if we're talking about MudRunner 2, dude, they should amp up the color. They should amp up the, the features and the world assets and stuff like that, like with more rocks, more trees, more different landscape types, more surface types, more different types of trails. All of these different things could add up to make a game that's way bigger than anything we've ever seen before in terms of off-road gaming, if you want to call it that. I mean, the off-road gaming scene or sphere or whatever you want to call it has really grown a lot in these past few years, and I think a lot of that has been due to the SpinTires franchise itself, starting with obviously the first SpinTires and then moving on to MudRunner and things like that. But I think in the mobile space, it's definitely been a lot more popular previously, so I feel like if MudRunner and the SpinTires series franchise, whatever you want to call it, was willing to draw some more inspiration from the mobile space, from games like Off-Road Outlaws, then they could definitely, I think, do a lot more in terms of really amping up what they have to offer in just like in the features department and in like the not really like the graphics department. I mean, I feel like Off-Road Outlaws is just limited on graphics. I mean, just because it's a mobile game, and it has to run on so many different platforms, that they're limited in what they can do. But if they were able to come over and make like a dedicated PC, PS4, Xbox One game, whoo, that would be like That would be crazy. I mean, and it would genuinely make some real competition for the SpinTires franchise and the MudRunner, like a whole MudRunner thing. Now, do I think they're going to do that? I mean, that's probably very unlikely that they would. I mean, they've already got a really good thing going over on mobile. But, you know, you can even technically, you could play Off-Road Outlaws on PC if you want to. That's how I play it. I play it through BlueStacks, which is an Android emulator. So, and then that way, you can assign your own key commands so you can play it like a PC game. So, it all depends on how you want to play the game. But with that being said, I mean, let me know in the comment section below which game you spend more time on, because I know a lot of my subscribers play both games. Let me know if you spend more time on Off-Road Outlaws or SpinTires MudRunner, and what you like to do in either game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up. Tell me in the comments below what you guys thought of it. And if you're new to the channel, please do consider clicking that subscribe button for more daily videos, and I will see you guys next time. Talk to y'all later.